NATO had spent 3 years insisting it would never cross the line from supporter to participant. However, on the morning of March 19, 2026, that line ceased to exist entirely, and the consequences of what replaced it are only beginning to reverberate through every capital from Warsaw to Washington. The images you are about to see on your screens did not come from a war film or a simulation exercise. They came from the Baltic coastline, from underground command centers in Romania, and from a classified coordination hub in western Poland that, until 72 hours ago, officially did not exist. What you are about to witness is not escalation, it is transformation. And there are 3 specific developments that together have crossed a threshold that the alliance itself once promised it would never approach. We will return to all 3 in sequence, but first, we must descend to the precise moment when everything changed. On March 17, 2026, at approximately 2:40 in the morning local time, a Russian Iskander-M ballistic missile traveling at Mach 6.7 impacted a facility 12 kilometers inside Polish territory near the town of Zamość. The facility was not a NATO base in any official designation. It was a logistics coordination center operated under a bilateral Polish-Ukrainian infrastructure agreement signed in February 2025. But inside that building, at the moment of impact, were 11 personnel from 3 separate NATO member states. According to preliminary statements released by the Polish Ministry of National Defense and later confirmed by German intelligence reporting cited by Der Spiegel, 4 of those individuals were British military logistics advisors operating under non-attribution protocols. 3 were French signals intelligence specialists. The remaining 4 were Polish nationals. 2 of them did not survive. This was not an accident of proximity. According to analysis published by the Institute for the Study of War within hours of the strike, the Iskander-M's targeting parameters indicated precision engagement rather than area bombardment. The missile did not stray, it was directed, and within 48 hours of that impact, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte had convened an emergency session of the North Atlantic Council under Article 4 consultation procedures, and 3 alliance members had quietly activated their national rapid reaction forces without public announcement. Now, to understand why this specific strike produced a response unlike anything that came before it, we must examine what was actually functioning inside that coordination center, because it reveals something far more significant than a logistics hub operating near a border. According to defense sources cited by Politico's Brussels bureau and corroborated by satellite imagery analysis from the Middlebury Institute, the Zamość facility had been functioning since October 2025 as a node in a joint targeting architecture linking Ukrainian GUR military intelligence directly with NATO member state reconnaissance assets. British RC-135 Rivet Joint Signals Intelligence aircraft operating from RAF Waddington had been feeding processed electromagnetic intercept data into this network. French Syracuse or 4 military satellites had been providing real-time imagery confirmation for time-sensitive target packages. The coordination was not passive. It was active, integrated, and operational. When the Iskander-M struck that building, it did not strike a support facility. It struck a functioning component of a joint NATO-Ukrainian targeting system, and that distinction changed every legal and strategic calculation inside the alliance simultaneously. The K-2 Black Panther tanks that Poland had positioned along its eastern corridor since January now had new orders attached to their deployment protocols. The 250 American Abrams M1A2 tanks pre-positioned in the Lublin region had their alert status elevated from maintenance readiness to combat readiness within 6 hours of the strike confirmation. Poland's defense spending, already at 4.8% of GDP and the highest in the alliance, suddenly looked not like ambition, but like preparation. The 300,000-strong force expansion program that Polish Chief of Defense General Wisław Kukuła had been accelerating since 2024 was no longer a long-term project. It was a present-tense operational reality. But that is not the most important detail. The most important detail is what happened in Brussels on the evening of March 18th, and it involves a document that has never been publicly released. According to 3 separate European diplomatic sources speaking to Reuters under condition of anonymity, the North Atlantic Council session that convened at 8:15 p.m. Central European Time did not simply invoke Article 4 consultation. It authorized, for the first time in the alliance's 77-year history, the activation of what internal NATO planning documents refer to as Coordinated Response Option 7. CRO7, as it is designated in SACIR planning frameworks, is not a military strike authorization. It is something more consequential. It is a framework authorizing the direct integration of NATO command and control assets into the operational planning cycle of a non-member partner state engaged in active armed conflict. In plain language, NATO did not send more weapons to Ukraine on March 18th. NATO merged its command nervous system with Ukraine's. The practical implications of this activation began manifesting within 24 hours. The E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft that NATO has been flying in rotational patterns over eastern Poland and Romania since 2022 were repositioned. Their surveillance corridors shifted eastward by approximately 80 kilometers, extending coverage into Ukrainian airspace along the Dnipro corridor. The Link 16 tactical data network, which connects Allied aircraft, surface ships, and ground stations in a shared operational picture, was extended to Ukrainian Air Force command nodes at Poltava and Vinnytsia. Ukrainian F-16 pilots, operating aircraft transferred from Denmark and the Netherlands, were now flying into an integrated alliance air picture that showed them not just Ukrainian radar returns, but the full electromagnetic order of battle that NATO had been building for 3 years. General Christopher Cavoli, Supreme Allied Commander Europe, issued no public statement. He did not need to. The repositioning of assets spoke with more authority than any press release. Now let us move the frame outward, because what has just happened in Poland and Brussels does not exist in isolation. It exists inside a geopolitical architecture that has been building since February 2022, and the Zamość strike did not disrupt that architecture. It completed a circuit that has been waiting for a charge. Finland and Sweden's accession to NATO transformed the Baltic Sea into what alliance planners have described internally as a closed alliance lake. Russian naval forces operating from Kaliningrad now face asset positioning from Finnish waters to the north, Estonian waters to the east, and Polish and German naval coordination to the south. The 1,340-kilometer Finnish-Russian border has become the longest NATO frontier with Russia in existence, and Finnish defense spending has accelerated to 3.1% of GDP, the second highest in the alliance after Poland. When analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies published their February 2026 assessment of Baltic security architecture, they concluded that Russia's strategic position on the northwestern axis had deteriorated by approximately 40% relative to 2021 baselines. The Zamość strike did not occur in a moment of Russian strength. It occurred in a moment of Russian desperation. The economic dimension of that desperation is not theoretical. Trade volume between Russia and China fell to $228 billion in 2025, a decline of approximately 7% from the previous year, as Chinese financial institutions grew increasingly cautious about secondary sanctions exposure. The ruble's purchasing power against the euro had declined by 31% since the beginning of 2024. Russian butter, an item whose scarcity has become something of a symbolic marker of domestic economic distress, has been locked behind retail cabinet systems in supermarkets across 17 Russian regions since December 2025. A nation that once threatened the world with hypersonic missiles now rations dairy products. That juxtaposition is not rhetorical flourish. It is the operating context inside which Vladimir Putin made the decision to strike a facility containing Western military personnel. South Korea's annual production capacity now exceeds 200,000 155mm artillery shells, and the majority of that production has been flowing through arrangements that NATO members have facilitated, though not officially brokered. Japan's Diet approved a defense budget of 2.1% of GDP in January 2026, its highest since the post-war constitutional framework was established, and Japanese intelligence sharing arrangements with Five Eyes partners now include specific provisions related to the Russian military's Far Eastern force posture. The integration of Japan, Australia, and South Korea into the informal architecture supporting Ukrainian defense has transformed what began as a European territorial conflict into something with a genuinely different shape. Russia cannot win a war of attrition against this coalition. The mathematics do not permit it, and somewhere inside the Kremlin, that calculation has been understood for some time. There is a man whose face has appeared in footage circulating through Ukrainian military intelligence channels in recent weeks. He is a Russian conscript from the Tambov region, age 23, captured on the Zaporizhzhia axis during the third week of February. In the video, which was reviewed by Radio Free Europe journalists before its wider distribution, he is asked how long he expected to survive at the front before his capture. He pauses for a long time before answering. He says he stopped counting after the third week. He says the officers told them the Western support would collapse by winter. He says they believed it. The soldiers believe what they are told because believing otherwise requires acknowledging a situation that offers no exit. Putin's strategy, as analysts at ISW have documented through intercepts and positional analysis, has for the past 18 months been premised entirely on Western political exhaustion, rather than Russian military achievement. The Kremlin trusts election cycles in Washington and Berlin more than it trusts its own generals on the Kupiansk axis. The Zamość strike was not a military operation designed to degrade NATO capability. It was a political operation designed to test whether the alliance would retreat or advance. The answer that came back from Brussels on the evening of March 18th was not what Moscow anticipated. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke from Kyiv on the morning of March 19th for 11 minutes. He said almost nothing about the specific contents of what NATO had authorized. He said only that Ukraine now stood inside an architecture of defense that it had never previously occupied. He used the word dignity 3 times. The choice was deliberate. Now we must look at what the coming weeks will produce, because the activation of Coordinated Response Option 7 creates a sequence of consequences that extend well beyond the immediate tactical situation. The first consequence concerns air defense coverage, with NATO's AWACS repositioning and Link 16 integration extending into Ukrainian airspace. The Patriot air defense batteries currently deployed along the Dnipro corridor can now be vectored against incoming threats using alliance-grade sensor fusion rather than Ukrainian national radar alone. The Shahed 136 kamikaze drone campaigns that Russia has been running at approximately 400 to 600 units per wave since January 2026 will encounter a fundamentally different intercept geometry. Russian electronic warfare systems that had been calibrated to exploit seams between Ukrainian national air defense nodes will encounter an integrated picture with no seams. The operational impact of this change could become visible within the first 72 hours of full integration. The second consequence concerns escalation management, and here the situation carries genuine uncertainty. Russia has previously issued nuclear signaling in response to Western support milestones. The transfer of F-16s produced a statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry in August 2024. The provision of long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles produced a statement from Dmitry Medvedev that achieved a particular virulence even by his established standards. The activation of CRO-7 is a categorically larger step than either of those. According to German intelligence reporting cited by Der Spiegel in its March 20th edition, Russian strategic rocket forces were observed conducting procedural readiness checks at 2 Topol-M missile bases in Siberia within 40 hours of the Brussels session. Whether this represents genuine preparation or calculated signaling, only time will tell. But the pattern of Russian nuclear rhetoric has consistently preceded retreats rather than advances, and the present moment offers no compelling reason to revise that assessment. The third consequence concerns the political architecture inside Russia itself. Youth unemployment in Russia reached 14.2% in the fourth quarter of 2025, according to Rosstat figures that independent economists believe substantially understate the actual rate. Military casualty figures documented by ISW through positional analysis and intercepted communications suggest Russia has absorbed approximately 1.2 million casualties since February 2022, 17 times Soviet losses in Afghanistan over a decade. A nation absorbs those numbers for a time, then it reaches a breaking point. We are not there yet, but the butter is locked in the cabinets, the sons are not coming home, and the victories that were promised have not arrived. The fire that started in this war's opening hours is now burning inside a different kind of structure. NATO's transformation from supporter to integrated partner did not happen because alliance members wanted escalation. It happened because escalation found them in a building 12 kilometers inside Polish territory at 2:40 in the morning on March 17, 2026, and the response that came back from Brussels was not retreat. It was architecture. It was permanent. It was the kind of decision that does not get reversed. The coming months will determine whether this integration produces deterrence or confrontation, whether Moscow reads the new architecture as a signal to seek terms or as justification for a further escalation that it cannot actually sustain, whether the integrated targeting system that now connects Ukrainian GUR intelligence with NATO command nodes produces battlefield results that change the political calculus inside Russia faster than economic exhaustion can do it alone. These questions do not have answers yet, but the frame inside which they will be answered has just changed completely. Share your thoughts on what NATO's full integration into Ukrainian command architecture means for the next phase of this conflict. The question of whether this represents the alliance's finest hour of strategic resolve or its most dangerous moment of institutional transformation is one that deserves your perspective in the comments below. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and like our video so that you never miss an analysis of the developments reshaping the world's security architecture in real time. NATO spent 3 years drawing a line it promised it would never cross. Today, that line is behind it, and the world it is walking into looks nothing like the one it left. Presented by TGN. Thank you for choosing us.